Hello, humans. So tangentially, we'll skirt the issue of the Trump indictment and potential arrest and tell you basically why all this stuff is happening the way it is. So there's all of these physicists and mathematicians and nut jobs like myself without credentials that are coming up with theories of everything. Now, the thing about the theory of everything is that if it's going to be valid, it's got to be able to be falsified, be checked, and then by some measurement somewhere, something like this. It's also got to answer all of the questions that are answered already in our understanding of physics. So it's got to subsume the existing knowledge of physics for the physics of waveform movements of electricity through chips, that kind of thing, right? It's got to account for all of that sort of stuff. And then it also has to answer the questions or fill the holes that prompted you to come up with it anyway, right? So it's got to answer all the questions that existed, which we know the answers to, so it's valid in that. So it's got to be able to handle, Maxwell's equations about the electromagnetic fields, right? That sort of thing. If it's going to say that those don't exist, then it has to have a replacement that would account for that and provide you with the same level of engineering math that allowed you to engineer these machines that I'm using right now. And so every theory of everything has a rigor that it's got to go through, a rigorous test. And then it's got to come up and it's got to fill the hole that prompted you to do this, right? And so everybody that does a theory of everything has something in everyone else's theory of everything that annoys them. And so some people tell you, well, I'm annoyed by so-and-so's theory stating this, therefore I came up with my own, and mine's better because, right? And then they'll go into it, and then everybody debates it, and there's years of activity on it. I'm not trying to do that, but essentially what I want to tell you is that everybody else's theory of everything annoys me. And my theory of everything, which is the model of continuous creation destruction, 22 trillion times a second time flickers into existence and we all come into existence again, and then 22 trillion times a second we go into a void interval. My theory of everything fills the hole that everybody else has left empty, that no one else has addressed. I've yet to see a theory of everything that answers this one fundamental question that we'll get into, right? And mine does. It tells you exactly why shit is happening, and that's the point, okay? So everybody else's theory of everything leaves out motivation. It leaves out why. So like Einstein, his quantum mechanics and all of that, no, it doesn't address why the universe exists, why we have material reality, why we're here, any of that stuff. Eric Einstein's geometric unity doesn't go into why we exist, why the materium is the way it is. Okay, so mine does. Mine answers this question. So that's basically what we're doing, is we're starting from the top down with the why questions. But we have a couple of assumptions that we're going to go through here real quick. And the assumptions are that there's echoes or design patterns or metaphor for anything above, that is to say outside of our basic reality, to that which is within our basic reality. So this is the saying, as above, so below, right? As is factored in heaven, so shall be made factored on earth. This concept. So we know that design patterns exist because we see them throughout nature. The spiral of leaves in terms of how they grow, replicated in the the spiral of coral, replicated in the growth of crystals, all of these things, right? The fact that most life molecules have a left-hand bent. That's why you'll see the amino acids prefaced with a capital L and a dash, you know. It's a left-hand bent molecule, L or arginine, right? Any of the amino acids, et cetera, et cetera. All these molecules have a twist to them. Very few molecules that can be accommodated in our body have a right-hand twist. Some of the exceptions are vitamin E. Okay, vitamin E is a right-hand twist molecule, and it must be so because of what it does. Which we won't go into any of that stuff. We're just staying at a very high level. Okay, so we're addressing the big question. And the big question is why? All right, and we all know why. And we're examples of why, we illustrate why, we constantly deal with why does universe exist, all of that. That's are part of our daily life continuously. Most of us just don't think about it at a conscious level. But our why is, you know, it's why woo, okay? Why do things exist? And this is a woo question in the sense that it's perfectly obvious, but no one ever addresses it. It's a hidden assumption and this sort of thing. Some religions sort of get into it half-assed, like they build up all of this structure that God is this being inside the material universe with us and has motivations, you know, a lot of anger, and they're not good gods, you know, like in the Torah and so on, right? And so they have, but we never address why is that God angry? Why is that fucker pissed at us that he does all of these things, right? Why does he curse Cain and all this sort of shit? Okay, so here's the concept. Consciousness is everything that exists. And so we'll just assume that this lumped up whiteboard here is consciousness. And it goes infinitely in any direction. And the definition of that infinitely is that if we were to be here on the plane and just kept going, that plane would never, ever, ever cease ahead of ourselves, right? It may be drawing up behind ourselves, we don't know, but it's infinite in the direction that we're looking, that we're heading. So as far as we can ascertain, it's infinite in all directions. Okay, so consciousness exists everywhere. Consciousness is self-aware, and consciousness gets bored. Consciousness knows everything. It knows everything. It is everything. So basically, it's sitting around thinking and doesn't have anything to think about. There's no activity, nothing to do, right? It's bored. And so it thinks to itself, what would make consciousness, all pervasive consciousness, not bored? And well, there's only one thing that could be, and that is novelty. Okay, the shock of the new. So if you're consciousness and you know everything, then the only prize, the only goal, the only excitement that you'll ever have is with novelty. Something you couldn't have thought of. You did not anticipate. Surprise. And so this is a huge thing, right? This understanding that novelty is why. So we exist in the materium because universe needed to see if it could create novelty. And it decided to try that through an experiment that we are part of. All right, all of our lives, everybody you've ever known, everything that's ever happened is part of this experiment. So we're sort of like the algorithms in deep thought in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the supercomputer that was going to turn itself into God kind of thing. But appreciate this idea. Consciousness is all pervasive. It wants to create novelty. It has to do it in such a way that it can sort of trick itself so that it doesn't know the novelty that would be produced, ergo it will still be novel, and it would be potentially surprised. Okay, so consciousness comes up with this idea. And consciousness creates the materium, all right? And so this is the materium. This here is the barrier that isolates the materium. Everything in here has matter. And nothing out here has matter at all. There's no material anything, right? It is an immaterial place. There's not even a place. There's no space. This is a very weird concept for us because we're trapped in here where there is matter and our consciousness is bound to that matter. Therefore, it is bounded, whereas out here, it is unbounded. So you have to get this idea of this duality that is instantly created by this thing right here. This goes to the creation concepts of the Cathari. Okay, so the Cathars that were wiped out on Friday the 13th in the 1300s by this crusade, they had this, they were quite numerous through Europe, and they had this creation understanding of good and evil. They thought we here in the materium, that the materium matter was created by evil, okay? This is a long and involved concept to why they thought it was the demiurge, the evil side of things that created this. And it's because it's material, and out here it's immaterial, and therefore the consciousness is all pervasive. They didn't understand the why part of this. So I'm augmenting some of the understanding of how the Cathari envision the universe coming into existence, right? Now, the materium has all of universe inside it. Okay, so all of universe is inside the materium. And within universe, there's all of the planets, you know, and then there's all of the galaxies and this kind of stuff. And you would be a speck so small, Earth would be a speck so small, we would not be able to perceive it in this representation of the materium. Because this materium is, of course, three-dimensional. It has dimension, it has time, it has existence, and it has matter. And it has these things that universe might be able to create conditions in which novelty could exist. So you have to understand that there are design patterns throughout this whole thing. Universe gets this idea that it could potentially be surprised. That alone is a novel idea, okay, that it could surprise itself. And so instantly we have this duality being created, and novelty exists from that point on. The mere fact that universe could conceive that it could be surprised creates novelty to itself at that stage, and thereafter everything proceeds. And the design patterns keep folding in on themselves and magnifying, but the patterns themselves of duality and the Trinity keep being created. Okay, because anything that is a duality is also a trinity. So if you have one thing and another thing, you also have both things. Okay, so you have three. So you have each and both. And this is an important concept all the way through, but nonetheless. Okay, so this here, this barrier, this is my theory of everything here, and it's going to explain. It already explains why. All right, that universe needs novelty to be created, and it created the experiment of the materium and shoved all of us in here. And so we are encapsulated consciousness that is a triune being. Okay, so there's three elements to us here. Again, another trinity there. One of those elements is divided up into 12 little chunks, and these little chunks are each individually come down into the materium and have a life. All right, and so that's how we each exist. But there are greater parts of us that are not in the materium. That's why we think of ourselves as having these higher beings and all of this sort of thing, right? Because that exists. Our consciousness in order that this might occur, we had to have a knower and a thinker and a doer. And this is actually the doer in the body. Okay, so that's what you are. You are one of the 12 doers in the body for your personality, for your persona, for your being. But the whole being is big, and only a little tiny bit can come down here in the material. That's why things are so tough on us. Okay, so understand some things right off. You're really fucking tough just to exist in matter. And universe, in making this experiment, knows that the shit you're going to go through in matter. It has already prepared a recovery period for you out in consciousness, where your consciousness can be cleansed of all of the crap you've gone through, all of the suffering you've endured, everything will be cleansed. It'll be put into a single drop of intuition that you can take into your next life. But because there's 12 of you doers in the body, you get to cycle. So you don't have to come back right away. So you get this long sleep to digest and integrate and come to grips with all of the crap you've got to go through in this life. So it's all part of a system, right? We can think of it as a system. And it's prepared there, right? Already for you. So okay. So it's easier on this side of the death barrier after death than it is here in the materium. All right. The materium is the experiment. It's the testing ground. It is the reason that we have a why question at all. It is the answer to that why question to create novelty. So it's an experiment where everything's like caged off in a giant three-dimensional petri dish, and there's all these humans, planets, aliens, platypi, lizards, bacteria, all this kind of shit, just all shoved into this experiment. And the idea is that the idea is to try and create the conditions that we call chaos. Okay, and within chaos used to be the name of a Greek god, one of the pantheons of the theoi, yet another name for all those space aliens. But chaos, as a concept, is not as we have a tendency to perceive it, because chaos itself was thought of by the Greeks as the potential for newness to emerge, for serendipity, for the happenstance of interactions that would not otherwise, in the normal staid course of events, come into being. And so chaos, in one sense, is an integral part of the creation of novelty. Now, if you look at all these languages, you get all kinds of hints of this, especially the further you go back into some of these languages, like even Greek. And you'll encounter people that have written of their descriptions of, as philosophers, of encountering psychedelics. Okay, they used to have the oracle at Delphi. That was a person that ingested gases that were psychedelic on their effect of the brain, had visions, wrote them down, etc. There were the mysteries at Elysium, which were psychedelic brew, that would in group kind of a way would take you and take you on these journeys. And these people understood in a lot of these languages, they appreciated the nature of chaos because they went to hyperspace, which is not material. Okay, it has some aspects of matter because it bridges the immaterial out here and the area of matter. So it has some aspects of both. This is also called hyperspace. This is where I place hyperspace in my theory of everything, right? My toe. My toe tells you why universe exists and why all this shit happens. And I can even tell you aspects of the why that are very interesting, at least to me. But anyway, so in my theory of everything, this life-death barrier is hyperspace. And so if you go listen to Joe Rogan talking about taking DMT or any of these other people, and you talk about and listen to them talking about psychedelic drugs and going to hyperspace, this is where they go. I think that that's where I went when I journeyed to hyperspace, was this, you might think of it as like the thin layer between life and death, but it's thick enough that your consciousness can go in there in this form, the consciousness of the doer of the body, in this 1/12th reduction of the greater being, can get into hyperspace through psychedelic drugs and other technologies, okay? And you can learn that hyperspace, because it is a, in my opinion, in my concept, because it's a three-dimensional, because it has dimensions within it, thus it has aspects of matter, because it has the materium within it, has those aspects that allow our consciousness in this form to come through in like this sponge layer, so to speak, and you can exist in here and interact. But because it's there, it's also got influences from the greater part of consciousness, so you can actually tap into your knower and thinker out that are on the other side of this barrier while you are the 1/12th reduction inside hyperspace. Further, you can also communicate with other beings inside hyperspace and observe them. Now, it's not like you can sit in a classroom. It's not like you can talk to these beings. It's not like anything is stable in hyperspace, okay? Hyperspace is frenetic and frantic and chaotic and bizarre beyond understanding, all right? And so it's not like you sit down and have a conversation with people. There are other beings there that you recognize as hominids or insects, other things that you recognize as flying. Other things that look like crystals walking along the bottom of a creek turn out to be crystals of time. All right, so you have to be really careful in making assumptions and doing things when you're in hyperspace. And certain psychedelics take you there better than other psychedelics. And that depends on your body and any number of factors that relate to you being that doer in the body and that greater being. So this is incredibly fucking complex. It's so complex that the design patterns constantly repeat in and out and echo back and forth and back and forth. One of those design patterns happened to me this morning. And so I'm sitting down there making notes as to what I'm going to talk about here relative to the hyperspace and novelty. And I just happened to get my first cup of coffee and go on over and open up my email. And the very first email there was this guy that sent me an email with a screenshot from ChatGPT about how to make psychedelic extracts out of seeds. Okay, and so it was just really curious. He wasn't making LSD, he was making LSA, which is, a lesser psychedelic, but nonetheless, it was just interesting that, here I was planning on I'd been thinking about this last night. Oh, I had an opportunity. I had some time. I could do this video. I'd been wanting to talk about the Y aspect and the toe and novelty, which brings up hyperspace. And boom, there you go. An email from universe, a design pattern echoing off of hyperspace coming back to me, basically saying, go ahead and do it, right? Basically, it was a confirmation. And so that a lot of people will describe these as, comms from universe or positive hits on your, what do they call that? Law of attraction, okay, that sort of thing. All of those are valid understandings of what's going on. It's all these echoes and constant movement of the energy inside the materium that create these interference patterns that then echo back to you that interact with your consciousness such that novelty could be produced. Okay, so the next part up here. So I'm an Aikido Ka, right? That's somebody who studies Aikido. The K-A means student. I have studied Aikido for 40 plus years. I studied at a very deep level. And Aikido is the harmonization of mind and body with universe, okay? So Aikido is, the concept is you recognize you're in the materium and you harmonize with all of these waves around you. Now, why would one want to do that if one were in the materium? Well, here's the thing. It's like the law of attraction approach. If you know these waves are moving through the materium in these waves and forces are much greater than you, and they're going to alter your life in this little tiny life bubble that is your body and your matter sitting on your chair listening to this, then one way you could make your life easier and better would be to harmonize with those waves. So if you had a wave through universe that came and informed you that the species, the money, the currency you're using is degrading, then you can harmonize with that by getting into something else, right? It's a way of you reacting to the inflow of information from universe in order that you might move, in order that you might have an activity, in order that there might be a dynamic response to what's going on, to thus create more novelty. Now, here's the idea. Things happen. Okay, so we look at all of this, and I'm sitting back here and I'm doing all kinds of analysis on my toe, on my theory of everything. And I'm writing out all of these things that I call the time rules, okay, as to how time operates. And this, because time exists only in 22 trillion times a second, there's a flash of time that exists for that 1/22 trillionth fraction of a second. All right, so we could think of these as, let me see, yeah, we can do it. Okay, so we could think of these as like bursts of time. And there'd be 22 trillion of these bursts so these four lines represent 22 trillion, and this bracket here represents 1 second, okay? And so there we go. So there'd be four of these, so there'd be 22 of these segments within this 1 second. If we think about this is the pulse, okay? The pulse comes through universe and creates all this continuously, but it's followed by a void which cleans it up. This is the way that universe would have the materium. That's the way consciousness would have the materium operate, such that we can have movement and all different kinds of things. So my theory of everything explains not only why universe wants to have this happen, but also how it happens. Because my theory of everything allows for growth, it allows for aging, it allows for infirmity, it allows for emotion. And you just don't see a lot of these other theories of everything that explain to you why you are having these emotions, why it is necessary that you react this way and experience this shit. Mine actually tells you this, okay? It's part of this thing of novelty. Now, so imagine this. If there are all of these waves and they're coming at you, and of course there's bazillions of them in every direction, and so there's all these interference patterns here that arise, that is those interference patterns and all these waves of energy that are created by time flashing into existence. If we think of it as flashing this way, then these things could be thought of as creating a wave, right? And so this wave is the energy that powers all of the universe. It powers you, it makes your heart pump, moves your blood through your veins, all of this stuff, makes your thoughts occur. And that is this pumping of time, 22 trillion times a second, powering these bow waves, okay? So that creates, according to my time rules, that creates temporal pressure. Okay, that happens 22 trillion times a second. It is the flashing of time into existence that creates all the different kinds of energy we see in our reality. My gas stove over here burning, plasma out of a jet engine, the sun, the creeping of a worm through the soil, the fall of water. All of these things are created by the temporal pressure of the time flashing into existence 22 trillion times a second. All right, so there's another aspect of this. So you have this E equals mc squared Einstein thing, right? It's not valid, in my opinion, at all. And my time rule, number 7, takes into account and replaces that. All right, so time rule number 7 says that, all right, so there's two aspects of this. There's temporal pressure, the pressure of time coming into the universe. And then there's novelty potential, okay? So, how to get this idea across. All right, so if we understand the nature of the pulse, it comes in and it creates all of the materium within 1/22 trillionth of a second, and then it disappears. And then it recreates the materium in the next 22 trillionth of a second. It keeps doing that. This means that the pulse necessarily transmits over itself. If we were to think of it as and see, there's more novelty. Now I have to get another color. We have to intrude. So all of these things are aspects of the universe doing this, right? I have to respond to the complexities and the chaos that's introduced by this thing running out of effective fluids. And so all of these design patterns are affecting us now. If you open up your mind, you can watch them unfold. This is the law of attraction. This is all of that spooky woo-woo, what they used to call quantum entanglement, all of that. Quantum doesn't exist. It's a bullshit way of thinking of things. Anyway, so here is the pulse, and it's coming in, circling around, and it crosses itself, and it continually crosses itself over and over and over again in every spot that there is any kind of matter or potential for matter to form within the materium. Just bazillions upon bazillions upon bazillions, a number so large we could not conceive of it, right? Going over and over and over itself, because it's been recreating the time aspect of this for how many bazillions of years, and it's all doing it within the materium. So the concept is that there is a novelty potential value that can be assigned to this location, this loci, okay? And that novelty potential value can be thought of as a complementary force to temporal pressure. So we have these two. So instead of E equals mc squared, in my toe here you have matter equals the temporal pressure times the novelty potential. And when both are at maximum, you have matter manifest. And there's some subtle variations on that because the matter may not change, but just manifesting in different positions through universe is also another form of a manifestation. It doesn't necessarily mean the appearance of a hydrogen atom or hydrogen ion, okay, which actually does occur. And that's how all of universe expands continuously, is that all these loci out in deep space and all of this kind of stuff are continually producing new matter such that novelty may expand and we may get more potential for novelty. Okay, so if we assume I'm correct and that this is existent, and that temporal rule number 7 says that manifestation or matter equals the product of the temporal pressure and the novelty potential, then as humans down in here, if we understand that to be the case, then we can look at things and we can say, why did this occur? Aha, there wasn't maximum temporal pressure, or there wasn't maximum novelty potential. I find in my analyses that novelty potential is much more the fine gradient factor within the materium in which we live. And so, okay, so let me bring this back and then I'll close, and then I got to do some other stuff. But let's look at the Trump indictment, okay? And so we have, didn't want to get into an erase it, but here, okay. So we have the, here, we'll do it over here. So we have the discussion at this one date, okay? And we'll just, I don't know, a couple of weeks back when they started talking about the potential for a Trump arrest, right? The Trump indictment. And that was at a particular date. And then they could have done it. They said that they were going to, it came out on a Friday. They said they were going to have this, that he would be indicted on a Tuesday, and then they would have to deal with the arrest aspect of it, right? Okay, and so that created, that responded, that was, okay, and that was a manifestation of the accumulated temporal pressure and the novelty potential at that point causes this thing to occur on that date. All right? But that was just a discussion about it. It didn't actually happen. It was just the emotions, everything coming on up. By the way, novelty is why we have emotion. You must have emotion in order that novelty might be existent with potential, because you have to interact with this process to increase the complexity, to increase the potential for chaos, and because you're increasing the potential for chaos, you're increasing the potential for novelty. Anyway, though, so getting back to Trump, so they come back up and they say, oh, well, we're going to indict him here. And we hear this particular date, and it's on a Tuesday, and nothing happens. So it doesn't happen. And then here we are now, and we're in a Thursday, and it comes out, and then they actually do it. And so there we go. We have manifestation because the novelty potential had been allowed to, it had gone on up with the discussion, and then it had ebbed off when it didn't happen. And then it started going back like this. And then they go ahead and they do it, and we get this kind of a novelty potential, or this kind of a manifestation, showing that if we were to look at it in a graph form, that at the first occurrence, the novelty potential was not as high as it is now. So you see that there's sag effect, okay? They big emotional buildup and then sag. And then, whoa, bigger emotional buildup when it's actually manifest. And so that's this aspect demonstrating itself through our universe as events follow those kind of patterns. And so it would also make sense then that if there were to be an arrest component, that it would follow maybe this same kind of a pattern, where it would come on over here, and then they would have a lot of talk about the arrest, and then it wouldn't happen. And then it would go along, and then it would happen, right? And so we would have this design pattern, the same kind of an occurrence at a bigger level of scale occurring up here. And that's basically how universe works. We see it manifesting this way constantly. Everything from flames in the height and flames in gas flames, all different kinds of things. So you have to understand that just as so as above, so below. Okay, so out in universe, out in consciousness, it's damn difficult to create novelty, to create anything that's random, because you're consciousness and you know every fucking thing. You know your own thoughts and the results of it before you have those thoughts. So in the materium, we have that same thing within our chips. We can't cause random numbers to pop up in any of our digital chips. The only thing we can do is set a range and fiddle with the range by way of interference, and a number will pop up within that range, but it's not ever going to exceed the range that's set by that random function within that chip. And it's definitive. So there's a lot you can do. So the true random things for computers, they'll do like put a camera looking at a lava lamp, right? That's plugged in. You know, those lava lamps where the things float up in the oil and then drop down and float up. Because it's reacting, the lamp itself is reacting to the heat of the light bulb, causing the oil to float up and the viscosity to change and temperature. But that is more or less controlled by the greater universe in the materium. So it's much more random than you would get with the computer chip. And then every so often, it takes a picture of where that blob is and then makes a random number out of where the distribution of blobs are within that picture frame that it got of the lava lamp. And so we've got, so there's all different kinds of these kinds of efforts to create true randomness for computer programming. I know of one thing where they're doing 3 lasers, and they've got 3 lasers, and they're basically taking pictures of dust particles that fall through through a grid created by these 3 lasers. And it so far has been much more random and much more effective in their particular computations than any kind of random they could create out of chips. Anyway, so random is hard. Chaos is hard in reality. But these design patterns exist all the way through here. So in my expectation, we're probably going to see something like this relative to any arrest that may or may not occur. So maybe maximum novelty potential is that we get right up to this point and it never occurs and it keeps stretching out. That would build up on, that would allow the temporal pressure to build up underneath that particular meme or metric or idea or emergence in reality. And so maybe that's what would happen. Maybe the idea is it would keep moving the potential for the arrest out. There's these issues though, right? Because it fades in our emotionality, the impact fades, and then of course it happens and it's a big snapback. But you're also at that point, you're operating from a higher level of potential to begin with. So anyway, so I've got all these time rules where I'm developing here and writing these things down, and it appears to be harmonious with the universe. So now, getting back to that real quick, and I'll got to get in and do work. So the people that are involved in this on both sides are trying to play timing, in my opinion, and working within the harmonious relationship of what universe wants, which is maximum potential for novelty. And so if one knew that these design patterns were in effect, then you could make certain decisions. You can instantly analyze things and know which way it's likely to go based on the design patterns that inform that thing. So we know that the Khazarian Mafia will be defeated because there's much more novelty potential with all of us free, okay? We know that that defeat itself involves novelty potential, and so it will be at a point of maximum stress, maximum temporal pressure, and maximum novelty potential that it will erupt into open warfare, right? So you can predict these things based on the growth of temporal pressure against novelty potential. A lot of temporal pressure on novelty that's just expended itself doesn't manifest anything at all. These things have to be, there's a rule number 7 is that you have to have maximum of these two items here in order that there might be manifestation. And so you can predict, sort of, timing-wise, when some of these things will pop off. And if not exactly when, the likelihood of the way in which they will manifest. Now, knowing that, as like a person within the materium, you can harmonize with the various waves that are going through the materium, or decide which ones of these waves to harmonize, to surf, or to swim through, right? To let it go over you and just swim right through it. Because you can say, no, I don't want to harmonize with that wave because I know there's this bigger design pattern that's showing, and this little wave is just within that larger pattern, and I'll harmonize with this larger pattern. You can use this all the way down to your martial arts, your Aikidos, right? If you know a guy is a karate fellow and he attacks you, and you see by his stance that he's, into kicking and this kind of stuff, then you can harmonize with him in the sense that you present to him a perfect target, like your knee, or some part of your body that would just be perfect for him to strike with a foot. And what you're essentially doing is harmonizing with his intent to do that such that he will do what you want, which is to bring his foot up to the point that you can grab it and turn the whole thing into a grapple. And he's not prepared for a grapple. He's a strike and kick kind of guy, and he doesn't do well rolling around, that sort of thing, right? And so, harmonizing at design patterns at a very facile, low level here. Anyway, so this is long enough, but I wanted to let you know that this is the way that my theory of everything works, and that one of the aspects of this, the novelty producing the why, answering the question of why, also is that novelty is the currency of hyperspace. So when you go to hyperspace, if you're there and you're aware enough, so it's not like DMT that just shoots you through too quick. But if you're there with like mescaline or psilocybin and you're there for a while, you understand that it's transactional. That there appear to be all kinds of transactions going on around you constantly. Even your own eyeballs are participating, or what you think are your eyeballs, are participating in the transactions that are occurring around you within this hyperspace area. you can magnify that thought and make it an objective thought and get into the process of trading. Okay, and in hyperspace, the currency is novelty, is new ideas. And so that metaphor goes throughout the whole of universe. And so look at how it is with us. If you have novelty in thought and you can get patterns or patents, then you're harmonizing with this design pattern and you are benefiting at a personal level because you got a patent and maybe you make money off of that, right? Maybe you'll make the world better because you got hooked onto the idea that novelty is what everything is about. And the more novelty I can create, the more universe likes me, the more the materium likes me, the more that my doer in the body will do well down here in the materium. Anyway, it's ever so much more complex than this, but this level will allow you to navigate ever so much more better. And I'll get into laying out all these other rules. There's a decent amount of them, but they go towards designing the floaty RV. So, you know, my obsession. But of course, look, Materium gave me that obsession because it wants me to have that obsession because it wants some novelty to be produced that I may not be able to see now, but maybe later on I'll be flying that novelty. So anyway, guys, take care and harmonize. It works.